Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar today. We have guests from GradRight here. Before we get started with the presentation, I would briefly like to go over some housekeeping. I would like to remind you that if you would like to get your closed captions going, please go ahead and do so by clicking on the bottom panel of Zoom. The chat feature is active, so please go ahead and use the chat feature to communicate with each other and to ask questions for the panelists. Also, you may use the Q&A feature if you would like. And last but not least, this webinar is recorded, and the recording will be available on our ACRO website here shortly. And without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to Ben to start. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Belmont. Thanks to everybody who's joining us live. If you're watching the recording, we want to thank you as well for finding a bit of time in your busy schedules. I'm going to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this. We want to make sure we're speaking to you. My name is Ben Galina. I'm joining you from Washington, D.C., along with my colleague, Sasi Sista, who is a co-founder and COO of GradRight. Sasi, give us a good wave.
Hi, hello there.
We're excited to be here with you talking about this topic of the graduate student boom in India. And you'll see that we've titled this presentation Redefining Recruitment. I think recruitment has become, in some senses, a bit of a tainted word when it comes to the Indian market. And we here at GradRight would like to reevaluate that with you. And particularly, we've got a good agenda, I think, in front of us today. Let me give you a sense of where we're going, what you'll get out of our presentation. First, we want to contextualize who we are. Why are we at GradRight, my colleague Sashi and I, talking about the Indian graduate student boom at all? And I think you'll see that we have quite a bit of depth of expertise in this area and a breadth of data to look at together. We're going to talk about some of those trends that have happened in the post-pandemic, if you will, to recruiting, and particularly center in on some of the geopolitical and demographic trends that are leading us to this place where maybe we do need to redefine or reevaluate what recruitment means and what recruitment means in India specifically. And we're going to take you through some of those particular challenges and opportunities in the Indian market in the format of a case study, which we have here for you today. We want to look at live analytics around what are the challenges that Indian students are having when it comes to securing education outside of India. And then lastly, and probably most excitingly to me and probably to you, Sashi, we're going to be joined by a good colleague and friend of GradRight, Gaurav Shekhar, who's a program director of the business analytics program and an assistant professor at the University of Texas, Dallas. We hope to have a free-ranging discussion around some of the topics we'll be discussing today. And we would invite you to be thinking about questions while we're chatting that we could ask Gaurav and the rest of our group here. With that behind us, those housekeeping notes, as Belma said, you'll get these slides and a recording after will be made available. I say we hit the road. Yes, Sashi?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get in.
So first, let's contextualize data for people. Here, when we're talking about GradRight, Sashi, what would you want people to know off the top of your head about the students that we work with? We've got a number of data points on the screen. You'll see the number of students that we've worked with. You'll see the average work experience of our students who are seeking grad education. And then along the right-hand side, just as much data as you could ask for. But what out of this, Sashi, it feels important to the audience?
I would simply summarize this data as roughly a representation of 10% of the Indian market. Over the last 2.5 years, we have seen roughly about 100,000 students using this platform, about 10,000 students really enrolling in different US universities using our funding platform. And we have accumulated a lot of data on their profiles and analyzed what exactly are their preferences, what are they choosing, what are they not choosing, are they getting funds, are they not getting funds, what is the entire journey looking like through a certain data points we have on the app. So the data in this presentation is really very close to a graduate market from India heading to the US.
I'd say, frankly, it's as close to a representative sample as I've seen, as someone who loves to look at, who's quite data-driven in the way that I understand the market of international ed. I think we've got a pretty good representative sample. And what you've shared is that we are able to see the whole student journey. And that's because GradRight as an organization is helping students, not only those who are doing the self-research to better understand the journey to the best fit right program for them in the US, the UK, wherever that may be, but also getting that financing. So what you see here on the screen is our attempt to help you see the overlapping spheres that represents. I think often in the United States, in my own experience as a former professor, and then with 10 years in enrollment management, what I have seen is that financing, because of organizational structures or because of tradition, can live in a different part of the mind even than admissions. But we at GradRight have understood that the student journey is one journey that includes paying for that education that they're seeking. And so that's how we're able to, that's the problem that we seek to solve, understanding that whole journey. And that's why we're able to look at data together with you folks today. That's not only about what students are interested in, but actually how are they paying for it and are they actually going? Now, in real terms, Sashi, I think you as a co-founder might be able to contextualize these data points for us very, very well. But I have to say, my eye is drawn particularly to the amount of students that have enrolled because of GradRight. We're using GradRight as a research tool, as well as that $200 million funded. What does that mean to you in real terms?
Right. So it essentially means that 20,000 students have basically made their dreams come true in terms of getting to their higher ed journey is possible. It also means that approximately about 300 to 400 institutions in the US benefited from this particular revenue of $200 million. In fact, a little more as we speak. It probably is touching about $300 million as an update. So we see that a significant growth has kicked in just the last 3 years. The market is changing, and we'll talk about those trends just in a bit.
That's exactly right. Yes, the market is changing. And that's one of the particular reasons that universities do partner with us. And the only reason I put this slide here up at the top actually is if you're watching this recording or you're joining us live, we want to make sure that you know that we are looking to get the best information possible for our students and to really help those students, as you put it so eloquently, achieve or realize their dreams. So you'll see examples of the reasons why universities partner with us. Particularly, I think this idea of finding the students that aren't reached through traditional channels. The students who, in our experience in the Indian market, as we'll share, are actually in the top 30 or 25% of those students who are seeking graduate education in the US. It's also about, I think, our deep experience in India. So while Shashi and I are both located here in Washington, D.C. right now, we have over 200 colleagues who are in offices across India, and helping us understand how universities can become household names, even if they're not necessarily in the Ivy Leagues in an Indian household. And so we do all of that in order to help increase yield and enrollment. If that's interesting to you, certainly at the end of this presentation, we'll offer you our email addresses, opportunities to explore more, but definitely wanted you all to be aware of that. Before we talk about these changing trends. So when it comes to international recruitment, you're probably all aware there is a big dividing line that we've seen before 2020 and after 2020. So whether or not you're going to use the term pre or post pandemic, which I know can be a bit dicey depending where in the world you are, I would say that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the pre-pandemic, pre-2020, and post-pandemic would be the stuff for us that's been happening in the last couple of years. If you've been recruiting during that time, before and after, as well as during the pandemic from a US institution at least, you've seen some wild changes. And so I'm not going to belabor a lot of this data, which is from the Institute of International Education, the Open Doors report that I know you all wait for bated breath along with me in November for. But let's just cover the basics. For decades now, China has been the largest source of international students to the United States. And while that remains true in 2024, as we talk to you, you'll see from the chart on the left, which represents year-over-year changes in this most recent enrollment year, that China continues to see pretty anemic growth, or in this case, a decline in the number of students sent overall. They remain the top source, but it's actually India that's really edging up on them. So if we look at total numbers of students from China, 289,000, totals from India, 268, they can look kind of neck and neck. But we're talking today about graduate recruitment. And so we need to break these numbers down a little bit further. When it comes to graduate students, India is the #1 source of students to the United States. And actually, China remains the #1 only when it comes to undergraduate numbers. The growth from India as well has been leaps and bounds ahead of the numbers that we've seen out of China. And I think you all are going to be familiar with some of the reasons. There are big global demographic trends at play, but there are also micro-national trends here, right? So when it comes to declines from China, we're all aware, I think, of concerns from safety from AAPI students, and particularly Chinese students during the pandemic and in the years after. The volatile political climate has certainly led to the Chinese government being on less friendly terms, let's say, with the American mission in China, which has led to fewer visas and less exploration by Chinese parents. And then when it comes to this increased competition, we generally see this, and this is a finding that comes from colleagues of ours who work across the world doing recruitment in and outside of East Asia and South Asia, that there's a lot of competition from local universities. And so we're talking about some of those universities you've probably heard of in Beijing, Shanghai, as well as universities in Australia opening back up after the pandemic, seizing some of the kind of student growth that would have traditionally gone to the United States. I love this graph on the right. The darker blue represents China, students from China, and the lighter blue looks at students from India. I think it was the current U.S. ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, who said it's been a great couple of years for universities who've invested in India. And you'll see that marked out very clearly here in this graph. So let's talk about those numbers from India. If we're talking about 268, international students from India in the United States, it's 165,000 of them that represent the graduate student population. That's an incredible increase. So if we look at isolating the graduate students as a portion of the overall number, it's a 62% growth from 2021-22 to 22-23. That growth is something that we see continuing at least for the next decade. And so Shashi's going to walk us through a little bit more what that looks like here in just a second. Shashi, let's talk about the Indian market.
Sure. The platform, while GradRight is a US firm with an intent to solve for the access to higher education problem across the world, we started off with a lot more intent, I would say, with a lot of intent to solve a problem between the Indian students coming to the US and the US universities really wanting these students to come in. So we see that this is a phase one, and so we dig deeper into creating applications and platforms for both the stakeholders, in fact, even the banks. So what the data that you are going to look at is going to comprise of all of that information coming together, and we'll deep dive into the Indian market with that insight, including the insights on how banks are looking at the university programs. So let's move forward.
So let's talk about, what have people been doing in this market that's been working or not working? What's happening?
Right. So I think, some of the points that, right in front of you are understanding of what universities are saying as their concerns when they dug deeper into some of the enrollment challenges that some of them have, either in terms of quality or diversity or volume, right? So just because their volumes overall increases, that doesn't mean that it is going to all institutions. So it is the first one that came up as right programs aren't always popular enough. So this is a common trend, and this probably is also creating a student loan debt in the US, and we also see that the effect across the world, wherein if there is a great program that you have at your school, how do you make sure that that is having a resounding effect with the students, with the families, and the banks, so that everyone actually is attracted towards that program? And often this is lost at a university ranking level, and then the rankings themselves have a different methodology than what a student really wants to evaluate this program on. So what general rankings that many people would buy in, we discount that a bit and we look at the underlying data. So that is one challenge we see that universities wants to solve for. The second one is surfacing your university to the right students at the right time. In general, there is a statistic about 6 months before a student actually applies is the time when they start researching and concluding their decisions. They talk to a ton of people. They try to do it by themselves. They were getting into the nuances of talking to people on campus. They're researching your website. All of that happens just in 6 months to 8 months before they actually hit the deadline of application. So to be able to create the ecosystem for them to readily take in whatever is required to be taken in at that time and actually apply, we will have to have a different strategy that would actually understand the timing in a way that it is not spread across the year, but the right messages are sent to the right people at the right time. So how do we make that happen? It's a lot more nuanced than just putting out a Google ad or being allowed on social media. So that is one. The third one is the volume of applications is not always higher enrollment. This is a very important problem that we are going to touch upon. You must have had conversations internally as yield issue, or people actually apply, but even you are ready to admit them, but they are not ready to enroll, or they want to enroll, they don't enroll. And one of the key challenges is funding, and we see that it has got a very important uh, I would say color to it in the context of, all the investments that you make towards getting that student really are literally lost if those students really not convert. Some of the universities we actually tackled worked with even 2.5% at yield, and there are some institutions up to even 40%. So there are all kinds of problems for different kinds of programs. The
And
last
this, I think, is an extra important one, Tashi, because you know that the past 5 years in enrollment management has been about the building of predictive models. And here we're just not seeing that the kind of top line numbers that used to lead to a particular number of enrollments, they're not matching up anymore. I think that's a
Yeah,
great point.
the problem with the predictive modeling that relies on only the past data that sits in the universities is that the reality on the ground has been changing pretty much. And so we need an understanding of what those changes are to be able to make it work for the university. So we're going to touch upon that very briefly today. The last one is the lack of honest and transparent system. Today, can you really predict? That really counts to the point that we are making. Can we really predict, looking back into your application numbers, and think that they will actually convert? Can you rely on that? Can you risk it? Can you increase your class size because of that? Can you increase the adjunct faculty or teaching faculty, based on all of the predictions? So we see that there is lack of transparency. There is a lot of lack of transparency in even the recruitment system because of the increasing agency model. So we also want to bring up some light on that, and we would like to actually dissect that problem and show you some of the elements that are coming up.
Right. So talk to us about this graph here.
Yeah, so this is as we saw India leading and getting into the position of having the largest number of graduate students coming to the US, you also need to understand that the mix of students who have been coming to the US from India is very different from China. 70% of Chinese students who used to come to the US, they self-pay, they can self-fund themselves. But whereas the middle class population that is growing and booming, as you see the graph here, and it continues to increase, majority of that middle class population really comes from India, Nigeria, Ghana, Vietnam. There's the kind of countries that are going to participate in the next 10 years for your class is going to be very different, and their challenges are very different. So this is only to emphasize the change, and 2021 being an important one according to Brookings Institute. There's a graph from the Brookings Institute report. And it's extremely important for us to re-strategize for these newer markets. How? We're going to touch upon that.
This is the final nail, I hope, in that coffin of people saying that India is the new China, Nigeria is the new India. We've got a totally different set of circumstances. That's right.
Yeah. So while I talked about $2.5 billion of loans that have been requested on a platform for just Indian students coming to US, UK, China, US, UK, Europe, and a few other geographies, we see that the mix of the income is significantly different. Like I talked about, 73% of Indian students have less than $13,000 as annual income. And this is straight away coming from the real financial data that the students are expressing in the interest of getting a student loan, trying to put out their academics and financial profiles on a platform. And an important one, many admissions officers or enrollment managers or some of the enrollment leadership folks ask in our conversations, hey, why do I have to give a credential evaluation waiver, or why do I not expect a GMAT test to be given by the student, or why should I waive the application fee waiver? There are many reasons why not to do it. There's one reason why based on the context, you may want to consider this is that if you have on an average of $500 requirement from a student to even apply when they don't know what happens after the application, the reality is that this is actually not easy because your argument could be that if $50,000 need to be paid as tuition fee, if someone is thinking of $500, maybe he's not the right person. That conclusion is a very dangerous one because in this market, the $50,000 is coming from the student loan. This $500 is coming from the actual family income from that month. So the importance that people pay towards this point is, has to change, I suppose, and understanding the context of the student will help you.
And who are the students that we're talking about?
So this is a very interesting, of course, this is, I would say, less data-driven than what the other charts are. So let me be upfront about that. However, this is anecdotal predominantly, and also there is a lot of backing of data in other forms. There is a placeholder data that we treat, and we basically see that there are stronger trends in this direction, which is the top 50 percentile students across the world, or maybe if we can even limit to across India, we often see that they don't rely on on agents or on counselors to tell them where to go. They want to take the decision by themselves. They want to visit the website. They want to go to LinkedIn, talk to your alumni. They want to talk to people who are on campus. They want to talk to people who have graduated from their undergrad college in India and here in the US want to take their advice. And they trust that advice, pretty much more than what anyone else would say, even their parents would say. So there is a lot of emphasis on trust-based networks and what those experiences are, and wanting to look at what has happened in the past in the current context. So that is what the students have been doing, and that's why the tier 1 students who want to do it by themselves, they often go to tier 1 universities. The students have carried now a strong impression that if there is an agent and if the name of your university pops up in the shortlist of an agent who is just charging them $100 and $300 or charging nothing, if your name pops up, they would immediately really question, is this really the right university that I should be at? Because they are trying to see who is being recommended to them. Is that the best university at all? And the agents are often doubted for their interest in the student's future. Rather, they are used mainly for a process check on what needs to be done rather than an advisory check and rely on their decisions.
This relates to your earlier point about kind of transparency of information and an ethical treatment of the student journey, I think. But it also, to me, points to maybe a little bit of market maturation, a more sophisticated set of students who understand that there are incentives at play and are trying to understand exactly how to get a journey that we're there at the center, right? And I think most importantly to my colleagues who are working in universities, I've yet to meet someone who's dedicated themselves to admissions or to enrollment who doesn't truly care about students. So the fact that students are taking themselves seriously too, I think is a really good point. And how do we work with those students is something that we're trying to understand today, I think.
Right, and the effect of it is real because we have seen in the funding, decisions that we put out, which is if there is a student who comes from an agent, we often see that the universities that they choose are actually not respected and well received by even the banks. So there is a higher amount of rejections on loans that they end up with because of the idea of the fact that they are going to a lesser known program, and so they basically go back to the source like you would do with your recruitment channels. The banks would look at, okay, which agent, why are they an agent? Then it is not probably a good quality lead. We would rather want to get to the direct students. So the entire market understands this, but everyone is silent about it. But the reality is in the way students take decisions, more and more students, the trend that I want you to remember is that more and more students want to do it by themselves and less through an agency.
Exactly. Now, let's say they do it by themselves. Where are they dropping out?
Yeah, the biggest reason, about 50% of the students, so about 70 to 80% of students who are going abroad to the US, for example, in the US, it is actually, I would say higher than 80%. is the number of students who rely on external funds. They apply for a loan. Without that loan, they're not going to make it to the US for their master's. And when they try doing that, and those are the kind of students that are wanting to come to your class, about 50% of them have funding challenges because the banks do not know the value of the programs they're applying. So it's very important to bring together the ecosystem of universities and banks along with students and make sure that they understand the value of each other in a very effective way. And data and technology can do it. And that's what we were after 2.5 years back. And we're like we see that there is traction picking up in that direction as we speak.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This one really gets my goat because I've been that person who's out there getting those leads. You're feeling really good at the beginning of the year, and suddenly no one's up on campus with you. And about 10 months later, it's a real bummer. Where does brand building fit into this then?
Very, very important one. So if the agency is not the route, how do you really get to the right student? And if, the comfort of an agency probably would be, or any other recruitment partner, is that you can offload your bandwidth. You would really want that other partner to really do a lot of heavy lifting. But in what model, and are they doing the things that would actually help you in the outcome? If you just think about those two scenarios of what is the channel partner what kind of channel partner you want to use, and what's the student that is your customer really wanting to get to, you would see that a strong reputation and brand building is a requirement, for that program in the right target audience. And that's what we emphasize on. So there's a sea of sameness. In fact, we interestingly are doing this in the Acro webinar. I remember from the Acro conference, SEM conference that happened in Seattle earlier in November, there is a conversation at the end, which is about a keynote speech about sea of sameness for all programs. And I'm delighted that it is at this stage, and it is such an important one. How do you differentiate your program? Everyone says, I have an MS Business Analytics. Everyone says, I have a MS Finance. You have to allow, and you have to work with the right partner to really understand the difference, pull that out, and enable your brand building, not just for that channel, but overall first, and then definitely utilize that for that channel in India or any other region.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the DIY journey of students
Yeah.
means they're open to engage. So these are new opportunities that are coming up. Now you have students who are wanting to do it by themselves. They're listening, they want to engage, they want to talk to the admissions officers, they want to engage with webinars, they want to engage with information sessions. They want to talk to people who are your, student ambassadors. They would love to engage. Now, do you have the right channels to engage? Do you open up? Do you have the methods in which your bandwidth is still effectively utilized, and not too much, but not too less, but really you're available and accessible for the right people out there? And that is what we see, that there is a value-based engagements that universities need to create, not just an information session, but go deeper and try understanding. If you're talking about finance program, can you actually understand what is happening in the news? Can you create something with your finance professor about a topic which is probably very central to the audience, and they would love to see that thought leadership coming in through that event?
Mm-hmm. You said earlier, it's not just another Google ad, it's not just another social ad. And I think this drives home the point that your brand can't live only on the internet, right? That is just never going to be successful in this current market space. Now, once we have the brand established, what does this mean for us? I think you've made this point well.
Yeah, so timing is key, and we talked about it, and it's about not just too early, not just the with the wrong audience. You have to basically bring the idea of target audience, timing, and message, overlap at the right time, at the right place, and that's really what is going to be important. And now there is technology and data that can really help you do that.
That's right. I think we have one last point here. Who else needs education?
Well, the banks, I would say, one of the important changes that we see in the last, just 3 years in India is that there's significant growth in the number of financial institutions who are ready to fund Indian students who are going to the US. The non-performing assets in the banking language or the finance language is number of people who are not paying back the loans is 0.01%. So 0.1%, it is 0.06% to 0.08% in some of the banks. So it's extremely lucrative for the banks to actually give money if they're going to the right program. So we see the need for their credit teams to understand the value of your programs. So that is the vehicle that we built, and that's a possibility we created.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Now let me let's look at one example of that together.
Yeah, so a couple of things that we did, and this is a very interesting one. It's probably a showcase of why banks, universities, and students need to have a conversation together. We did a very exciting conference conclave for the first time to really talk about the issue of access to higher education in a sustainable manner without creating debt for the students. And how can that be a possibility is the conversation we have the deans, we have vice chancellors, we have provosts coming in and taking the stage and actually discussing along with the CEOs of the financial institutions that are wanting to open up into student loans, and especially investing in the students who are going out to the US. And we see that this is a proof that about 8,000 students actually registered, about 2,500 people were in the conclave. This just shows the need for such an event and such an ecosystem to come together. While this is a physical outcome, there is basically an online outcome that we can create, and that is what our systems do.
That's right. And I'll just say anecdotally, since you're too humble, that this was a hit with some of these universities that you see, with all of them that you see here. And I'm still hearing months later, individual student names come out of admissions officers' mouths of students that they met whose applications they're seeing now and that they're excited to be seeing. Now, if we put this whole work of brand building to the test, I think University of Miami gave us a good case study.
Yes, in
What would
fact,
you want people to know about this?
right. So one of the things that is very important is to build the brand and build it in a way that it is known for it. So Miami is known for diversity. University of Miami is very well known for its program reputation and exceptional programs at the business school. We wanted to voice that out, and we wanted the people who matched with that character, who would align with that expectation, to really have the audience to have basically the ability to go to the University of Miami and understand the value of it way before. So we, in a very strategic manner, identified those trends, and that has really been an exceptional project, still ongoing, and there are a lot of work to be done, of course. But we are very excited to see that we are scaling up such partnerships to really centrally brand in the right market for the right programs.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I am so pleased that we get to do something pretty fun now, Shashi.
Yeah.
Which is we're going to look at some live analytics, correct? So if you're following along with us, we've been looking at a PowerPoint together, but we'd like to make this a little bit more engaging. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some live analytics together. Let me share my screen here. And Shashi, what are we going to be seeing here with these analytics?
Well,
What opportunities exist for this?
yeah, sure. So firstly, these analytics are, it is about the live data on a platform about any university. So we put out an analytics report and that you can have access to really understand what's the international student market that you have, how is it looking, how many people right now are on the platform that are really matching with you. So we can look at, say, an example, we are in DC, we can look at George Washington University probably, and very quickly see what the data on that would call out.
Now, this, while this is looking this up, I would want everyone who's watching the recording or live here with us to know that we're big believers in transparency. You've seen that in our mission and in the concerns that we have for ethical treatment of students. And so we've made all of these analytics transparent as well. So whether or not you work with GradRight, these analytics are available to you to look at for your institution specifically. At the end of our presentation, we'll have a link to direct you right there to it. And we'll follow up as well with that link so that you could see for yourself exactly what the numbers say. I'm going to do a quick little refresh. I think
We can try University of Southern California. If the data is too huge, then we power pack this analytics, so you would find a lot of it coming together if it as it loads.
That's right. Yes, this is because I'm open in too many tabs. Let me just verify.
And the idea is to really understand the intersection of what we talked about, the need for a great branding, but at the same time, when you have that pipeline built out, you have the relevant students really coming together. Can you make it work? Can they make it work? Which is on the funding part. So we have the ability to see how many of them match between university and student. So university wants the student wants the university, and then how many of them actually are able to fund through. So that is a very interesting set of statistics that you can probably get to. And we can probably get to the as we share the links, and we can try sending that information out to you if you're interested in knowing about this information and understanding how your particular institution has been performing.
Yes. Shashi, I may not be able to get this because of just my own internet here where I'm located. Let me stop my share here for 1 second and see if you'd like to share your screen and open up those analytics for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me 1 second. I'm going to, I'm going to look at the George Washington University analytics so that we have clarity on, say, what is happening for a university, which is a private university, which has a certain amount of funding requirements as usually students would ask for on our platform. And University of Southern California is another institution like that. So let me quickly get to a screen share. It's interesting. I think we will straight away send the report to you as you look at this, but let's move forward. I think I'll get back to this probably at the end of the
Yes, I think actually we've had a guest join us. We're very excited actually to have this guest with us. Let me get back to the slides if you'll allow me. And we will be very pleased to welcome today Gaurav Shekhar, who is the program director of the Graduate Business Analytics program at University of Texas, Dallas, as well as an assistant professor of instruction in information systems. What else would I want you to know about Gaurav? I would want you to know he's a big believer in servant leadership, which is probably why he's done us this favor of joining us today. He also is an international student himself. So Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. My pleasure to always help anybody who wants to know about this topic. It's something which is very close to my heart, and I think all of us, including you all, we are here to serve our students. So whatever we can do to help.
Yeah, exactly right. Gaurav, could you start maybe by just telling us a little bit about your own journey, and then I'm probably going to just do a little bit of an interview of you and Shashi together here on a few questions.
Absolutely. So I came to UT Dallas about 8 years. This is my 9th year here in the US. I came to UTD as a student. I wanted to get my master's degree. And of all the institutions that I got admit from, I chose to settle down with UT Dallas. Great place. If anybody's thinking about it, it's a good place. But for me, it was a bigger change than just getting a degree. After graduation, I went out to work in the industry again, but then somehow something got me back into academia, and this was a very different turn. I'm still explaining it to people, how did that transition from industry to academia happen, but I feel it was a good turn. And the program that I was once a student, and I ended up being the program manager, then joined the school as a full-time faculty, later as a program director for business analytics. And right now I'm serving as the senior assistant dean of the school. So it's a good place. It's been kind to me. That's what I would say.
It's been kind to many. From what I understand, Gaurav, UT Dallas remains one of the top performing institutions when it comes to recruiting Indian students to campus. What do you kind of think is behind that success, besides your presence there, of course?
Oh, no. It's not my presence. I think it is a lot of things that makes UTD what it is. students want to be at a place that cares about them, and not just cares for them, but I'm sure every institution out there has wonderful people, faculty, staff who work tirelessly for students. So I can't pick two institutions and start comparing them which one is better or not, because all of them do such a wonderful job for our students. I think our programs and the fact that we are a very techie business school, we're able to attract a lot of people. And as I know, as Indians like to dabble into roles which require technical skills as well. I think UTD is a good place. We are a very nerdy school. We don't have a football team. We have a Division 2 football team. Okay, let me put it that way. But we are the #1 chess team in the country. So if people want to go study, they want to do research, they come to UT Dallas. Our rankings have been tremendous. And in fact, the Jindal School of Management is one of the top ranked. In fact, between Wharton and ourselves, we are always kind of switching between one or two as a top business school. In information systems, we are ranked really, really high, ahead of many Ivy League schools out there. So I think the rankings do play in. But for our students, a few things. Number one, Dallas itself is an amazing place. If it was a country by itself, it would be the 23rd largest economy in the world. Texas is the 8th largest economy. So people, when they come to UTD, they're coming into the business bowl of the world. And then on top of it, the programs are there, the number of electives that students can choose from, the quality of the faculty, opportunities to research, and then be in one of the most thriving metroplexes of the world, Dallas Fort Worth. I think there are a lot of factors that make UTD what it is, especially for Indian students. And for that matter, I would say UT Dallas is a melting pot. We have students from 125 plus countries. Everybody finds their place in this metroplex, and especially for Indian students, they're out of the 8 million residents of the metroplex, about 250 to 300,000 of them are Indians. So there's a very strong community. And having that sense of community is important as well, because when people come from far off places, they want to be at places where they can find their roots back. And I think that is what is attracting a lot of Indian students. But yeah, contrary to popular belief, 99% of students at UTD are not Indians. As I said, there are lots of people there.
That actually brings me to a question that I have. What do you think are the challenges that are faced by a typical Indian perspective student that you have that are kind of unique in kind to an Indian student, as opposed to any of those students that you get from 124 other countries?
I don't think it's one of the things is, and I always say this about international students. International students, it's an act of bravery to leave the place of your comfort and leave everything that you cared for, you grew up in, and just go to another place and try to regrow yourself. So I think all our international students, not that the domestic ones do not put any effort. Of course, there's a lot of effort that every student puts in. But I think, especially for international students, that is something. Of course, depending on what part of India, and India is a very diverse country. I mean, every 70, 80 miles, the language, the dialect changes, the food changes. But, there is so much variety that I think sometimes what I hear from students is weather is the #1 thing that affects them. Now, if you come from warmer places, being in Texas, we're like a hot plate. So we're good. But then suddenly, like today, from the mild 70s, the temperatures drop to 40s. Now, Texas, I don't know. They say that the Texas weatherman plays the bingo a lot to settle down with the numbers for the day, and it's just like that. But then I think weather comes out to be one of the things. Food, to be very honest, used to be, and I'm talking about 9-10 years ago, it used to be something. But now, if you go around, there are so many restaurants. So much so, within the School of Management, we serve vegan food, vegetarian food. There is cutting chai that is given. I'm sure that it's a matter of time that somebody will be sitting with a hot plate and making dosas and vadas and whatnot, just because of the demand of what it is. However, I would definitely say one thing, especially Indian students, because I interact with a lot of them. Their resilience and their ability to amalgamate with the local population is amazing. they would want to try so many things. Like, for example, the way Thanksgiving is celebrated in the US. That kind of experience is very different in India if they celebrate Thanksgiving. But students, they sign up for those events. They go to families, American families who host them, or they will take part in other cultural festivals that so many of these different communities do. I think that is what makes the Indian student so resilient. And I have not seen anybody who says that they are in a dearth of resources, because they end up finding it. So that is it's testament to the fact that we have so many students coming from India. India is a top destination for US is a top destination for Indian students. Almost 100,000 students coming in fall. I mean, that's the projected numbers. That will not happen if US was not like home in a lot of sense.
So if I may ask a question,
Yeah.
Gaurav, do you see that in the last 3-4 years, as the numbers changed from away from China towards India, do you see the funding of the international students, especially Indian students, is a topic of discussion on campus? Is that something? Can you throw in, because you have what you have around you is a population from India that is probably voicing the problem or showing what is important for them. So
Yeah.
this audience probably would benefit from what can be the things that they can solve for in the other institutions as they get deeper into Indian market.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, funding is always the number one question. Affordability comes later. I feel people should not look at from the perspective of where I am paying lesser tuition, because if you're specifically talking about Indian students, whatever the number is, low or high, when you convert it into INR, it's a big number, irrespective of where you go. So I would say, rather than affordability, it should be about, do I have funding? Now, the kind of jobs that students get in, I know for a fact, for a UT Dallas student, it's with whatever experience they have, it's always high 90s. That's the average that they make. And if they come in with experience, it adds several thousands of dollars there. I would say, if a student is trying to come to the US, funding, number one, don't plan for the best case scenario. A lot of times people, what they do is they will think about, okay, how much is the tuition? How much is the cost? When I go to my university, I will immediately get an on-campus job, and then I'll become a TA, and then I'll have an internship. These are amazing things. And I wish it happens to every student in that sequence, but it doesn't. And there's nothing wrong in it, because whether it's a on-campus job, it's a TA-ship, it's an internship, everything has limits to it. Okay. Now, having said that, every student gets an internship or has a possibility of getting an internship. That may not be true for an on-campus job. And that is where the element of funding becomes very important.
Right.
Calculate your expenses based on what is your worst case scenario.
Right.
If no, I have no support, what is my tuition going to be? What's my cost going to be? What is my all the miscellaneous expenses going to be? If you want to look for resources, look for something which is available on campus. For example, we have something called the Comet Cupboard. UT Dallas students are comets. So we have something called the Comet Cupboard, where students can get 2 to 3 food items on a weekly basis. So like that, I know that a lot of universities have that kind of support. So look into those things where you can sustain yourself, but don't prepare your budget keeping the best scenario in mind. I have seen students at UT Dallas also struggle through it. And the number one reason is they always opted for a lower end number when they were estimating their budget.
Right.
So my recommendation is, go to institutions who can help you cover the funding base. Because once you get a job, the return on investment is high, irrespective of where you go. And whether, if you go to a top institution and you're able to make a huge salaries after graduation, maybe your loan repayment will be smaller.
Right.
But it's not going to be extremely high for students, irrespective of where they go. So don't get scared about how much it is going to cost. Look for a person who can fund your education. There are so many great, not just banking, but non-banking financial institutions. You guys are doing that yourself so brilliantly. I mean, look for that. And one more thing I want to say is, and this is especially what I've seen with Indian students, I know you all care for your parents, your families, and everybody so much. When you're coming here, don't keep that load on yourself that you have to start supporting your family from day one of arriving in the US.
Right.
You will not use the money that you have in your loan account, or you won't use the change that you probably would have saved. Use it. That's an investment. It's an investment. If you have less money, a company that gave you loan is backing you up, but do not put that extra pressure that I have to take care of my family from day one. I have to pay back my loan from day one. There are
Right.
ways to take care of it. So don't just get bogged down by things that
That
are not required to be a problem from the get.
correct. That's it is interesting. What is the takeaway for the university enrollment heads or the deans or anyone who is watching this would be to understand that the financial advisory for for these students, right from the application stage, is crucial for
Yes.
them to plan the right finances in the right way, without any assumptions, and make sure that they, what is really required to be done needs to be done as early as possible, considering that it affects their ability to actually get the visa and come here. So that probably is a good takeaway. Thank you for even putting in the student slide, because I think there is the students' experience and what their assumptions are often not, sometimes they don't reach the admissions offices often. So thank you so much for putting that on.
And Shashi, just to add to that, funding also plays a major role in their visa approval.
Correct.
When the loan, well, not loan officer, when the visa officer looks at their application, they ask, what is your source of funding?
Right.
And they do give a lot of weightage to companies who are providing loans, because they know that you're coming from a country where the whether you call it the purchasing power or the cost of living index is lower than the US.
Right.
So you cannot have everything saved unless and until you're able to substantially demonstrate that it is your savings. So
Absolutely. And Gaurav, I have to add in a metric there, because you talked about the visa part. In general, there is a success rate about 50-60% for visa. Sometimes people get it even after they have an admit. They may not get it at times. What we see is when we have the platform with about 15 lenders and supporting the entire journey of the students. If not one lender, the other lender participates in bidding. And in this process, when we have a credible financial institution really participating in giving the funds, the visa success rate is in the range of 90 to 93%. So what you said is very evident even in our data in terms of the success of students getting to the right visa. Yeah. And back to you, Ben. Sorry to hijack.
No, I'm glad that you did. I think we have time for one more question. So if you feel like you've got a burning one, Shashi, otherwise I'm curious to know about the future. I think we're here talking to people who have hopes to be successful like UT Dallas. They would all love to be the Jindal School of Management. Maybe they can't, but maybe they could definitely adopt some of the practices that have been successful for you, Gaurav, and your colleagues. What are you looking forward to that you think is going to help build the class of 2025 besides the rankings?
I think one of the things that we hear from our students, and I'm not just going to cook up something that has not happened, because our students are our best way to tell us what is working and what's not working. If you ever want to figure out what you're good at, just ask your students, because they are you did something which brought them here. So they're the ones to, and I often hear that institutions who are able to respond to them quickly are able to give answers to their questions. And a lot of times these questions are coming out of very deep concerns. Because, just to take an example, if a domestic student has to start college, the process is very different for them. Sometimes, the whole family will pack up a car, they'll go to the campus, they'll do a campus tour, they'll go to 10 campuses. And here, our international students, the first time they step foot on campus is when they have got the admit, they are enrolled in the program, and they are here with their bags. I mean, who says that, this is not a set on which we are sitting here and just talking about a university that doesn't exist. So I think that trust is amazingly important. And that is built when they get timely answers. Their questions might seem very small to you, but remember, somebody is leaving their home for a significant amount of time, and they need all kind of help to make sure that they're making the right decision. So just help them with their questions. don't wait for all the questions always. Think about, what kind of questions have come in the past. What are some of the challenges that you have seen your students, and address them upfront. And to be honest, we talked about funding. Funding is a critical piece. I mean, for the last 3 years, for example, UT Dallas and the Jindal School, we have been doing a financial planning webinar. Why? Because for ages, we heard our students talk about how they run out of money, how they didn't get enough money. And the reason was not because somebody did not give them enough money. They didn't ask for enough. Why they didn't ask for enough? Because they didn't know what it will cost. So
Right.
you have to play that role of holding them responsible, but you are also responsible for them. You are accountable for them. And
Absolutely.
I think by answering their questions at the right time, giving them that support, a lot of times peer mentors, they might not be able to ask you a question, but if you have a student ambassador or a student peer mentor, connect them, let them talk to your alums. Whatever it takes, put every question, every iota of any questions to rest so that they can come here comfortably. When they build that trust with you, remember, a well-served student is a great alum. Your job is to create great alums, and you cannot do that if you don't have a good student. You will not have a good student if they were not taken care of when they were a prospect. So it's a life cycle, and which there is no circle here. There is no end point here, because when they become your alums, what is the #1 recruiting tool for UT Dallas? Word of mouth. Our own people who have gone to UT Dallas are our ambassadors who talk about, well, you should go and get a degree at UT Dallas. So it it it, it gives you very long term perpetual returns, and I think that's what this uh, the institutions should really think about. Putting their students at the center. I mean, in simple words, if we all were going for a degree, how would we want an institution to treat us? If you can answer that question and implement the steps, you've won it.
Fantastic. I think you nicely packaged those few things that you pointed at in the last 1 minute. Engagement with the students, getting your student ambassadors to actually be on the forefront, making sure financial advisory is reaching your applicants, and ensuring that you do the best with each student, right from the start, and proactively doing all of that. In fact, you probably just talked about what GradRight as a system can do for the university. So thank you for that.
There you go.
So with that,
I echo Sashi. We're so grateful. I want to turn us back here in the last minute to one final resource for folks other than this conversation, which would be the ability to see some data that's specific to your university. So if you're interested in that kind of representative sample, as we were deciding it was called earlier in the presentation, Shashi, if you're interested in seeing, of those hundreds of thousands of students who have touched GradRight over the past several years, how many of them are interested in you? How many of them are interested in you and already know they have funding sources? How many fit one of those criteria and perhaps deserve a little bit of your attention? Please scan that QR code here or in the video if you're not with us live. My email as well at the bottom of the screen, along with Sashi's. We welcome any questions that you have. One thing I'm taking away from this conversation today that perhaps we could end on is just how human an endeavor all of this is. So as we try to layer on technology and better understand broad swaths of historical data to make better predictive models and better tools for students, what I got from you, Gaurav, and what I'm hearing throughout this conversation is that this deserves our time and attention, because we're talking about people who are making very big decisions, and we as people can support them. So please let us know how we can do that for you. I want to get you out of here a minute early, so if you have other meetings, you can go use the bio break and get some water. On behalf of Sashi and myself and GradRight, we want to say thank you so much. And Gaurav, to you particularly, we want to say thank you. To our friends at Acrow, best wishes, and we'll see you soon.
thank you so much, Gaurav.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.